a little unfinished business. Last night I mentioned something. I didn't mention the whole thing. I didn't have it on Royce, but very fascinating. The daf on the top of the Amid Beis said that Yaakov Avinu davened that the muzzle should not be taken off Gormamia Shel Edom. The lashon of Gormamia Shel Edom should not be taken off, because if it was taken off, the world would be destroyed. That's what it said. We saw yesterday from the Yavitz, Rav Yaakov Emden, that he says the Girsa is Kimiduma. It's not Gormamia but Gormania, which is Germany. Ashkenaz Shalonu. That's Germany, and he lived 350 years ago. So if the Kadosh Baruch Hu took the muzzle of Germany, they could destroy the world. And we spoke out that since the Jews are the purpose of the world, if the Germans would have killed us, the whole world would have been destroyed. Gemara is very, very prophetic. So I brought in yesterday something that is very, very fascinating, and based upon Yemach Shemai Julius Streicher. In October, I think 16th of 1946, which happened to be a Shana Rabbah, they brought to the Nuremberg trials, which have been ongoing, came to a conclusion, and they were going to hang 11 Nazis. One of them, the biggest one of all, Hermann Göring, Yemach Shemo, he cheated the hangman by getting a cyanide pill. My brother-in-law told me, Lenny, who said that they smuggled, Göring's girlfriend or wife paid someone, an American soldier, to smuggle in a pin a cyanide pill, and he killed himself. So we only had 10 people to hang. And as we went to the gallows one by one, the most, probably one who knew the most about the Jews was the hideous individual. Really, his name is Julius Streicher. He had nothing to do with the army. He had nothing to do with the concentration camps, but he had everything to do with going ahead and influencing the German people that the Jews were vermin. Because for years and years and years, he was head of a publication called Der Struma, which is the newspaper. And if you ever see the cartoons that were depicted in Der Struma, they're the most awful characters of Jews. And he was found guilty, and he's death by hanging. As he got to the gallows, right, and the noose went around his neck, he screamed out, Purim Fest 1946. Purim Fest 1946. So I want you all now to look. I sent out on your phones. I want you to take a look at what I sent out. I sent out a picture from a very nice Megillah, and those people over here, we'll share it on the screen here. We'll share it over here. If you take a look, these are the 10 sons of Haman. If you take a look in the son Pasha Pesha, you have a tough. If you go down a little bit, if you look at Parmasha, you have a shin, and if you go to last one Vaisasa, you have a small Zion. So you have a small tough, a small shin, and a small Zion. And no, for years and years, no one could figure out what was the purpose of the small letters. What was the purpose of small letters? So the year happened to be the year Tuf Shin Zion in the Jewish calendar. That was the year that they hung the 10 Nazis. That was the year they hung the 10 sons of Haman. It's unbelievable. Said the Belzer Rebbe, Mamish Divrei Nevius, guys. Divrei Nevius, the Belzer Rebbe of Aaron, the Heliger of Aaron Bells. That for 2,000, over 2,500 years, you're writing Megillas. Those letters were there, the small letters, Tuf Shin Zion. No one, they were always there. But no one knew why. It only became a scholar all the years later why they were there. Such an unbelievable, fascinating tidbit of goiness, of Ruach HaKodesh, of just unbelievable. That Tuf Shin Zion, that was the year, in fact, that which one? The Machshemai? Julius Streicher. He was a millionaire. He was every Megillah has that. Every Megillah. Every Megillah has it. Go to move over one seat so I can see him. Right? No, they never had a reason why it's here. No one has any pshatim. Every Megillah's had it for over 2,000 years. You can see it's beautiful, nice Megillah, right? And you have it, each one over this. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable, fascinating. I had the story about Göring and killing herself. I didn't put it together last night because I saw it, but I listened to Sully Bornstein. I looked up the article. It was unbelievable how it all came together. Just fascinating. Again, if you want a little chizik and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is menakim the dam, right, of Klal Yisrael, a little bit like it doesn't make a difference, but understanding that we lived there was HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not allow the Germans to go ahead and kill us. It was our own Purim, and he thought it's
printed in Chumash like that also.
Small, yeah, it's always there. It's always there. It's always there. No one knew why. No one knew why. That's the reason. It's unbelievable. Okay, so I just thought it's fascinating. I thought that was a little bit of unfinished business. So you can put it in your Gemaras, Vav Amid Beis at the top line. Okay, we saw yesterday a machlokes between Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel as to when, if you would read the Megillah in the first Adar, would you be Yotza or not? Like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, you would be Yotza. In other words, I read it in the first Adar. I don't have to read it in the second Adar. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, no, you'd have to read it in the second Adar. And the reason was not given. We're going to come up with the reason now. Okay, so we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Amar Rab Chia bar Ravin, Amar Rab Yochanan, Hilchas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Sham Rab Yossi. Amar Rab Yochanan, Ushnei Mikra Echad Darshu. Says Rabbi Yochanan, both Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, they both darshan from the same pasuk their halachos. Listen to this. The pasuk says B'chol Shana B'Shana each and every year. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi Savar B'chol Shana B'Shana Ma Kol Shana B'Shana Adar Asamich L'Shvat. Just like every year when you learn the Megillah, you're going to learn the Adar that's next to Shvat. Afkan, even when you have two Adarim, Adar Asamich L'Shvat, you're going to learn the Adar that's next to Shvat. You're going to learn the Adar that's next to Shvat. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar No B'chol Shana B'Shana Ma Kol Shana B'Shana Adar Asamich L'Nisan. Afkan Adar Samach L'Nisan. So obviously, if you only have one Adar, that Adar is going to be flanked by what? By Shvat on one side and by Nisan on the other side. Which direction do you go in? Do you go to the direction of Shvat, as says Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, or do you go in the direction of what? Of Nisan, as says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, Mistabet Haima. It makes sense, given our druthers, to go in the direction of Shvat, the one that's next to Shvat. Why? The Eima Vir in ala mitzvahs. You don't pass over mitzvahs. You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Here you are. It's the first Adar. We have a Svara. Therefore, in other words, we don't know which way to go. Go the one that's next to Shvat. Afterwards, Eima Vir in ala mitzvahs. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, my timer. What was pressing Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that he said that you go to the Adar that's next to Nisan? Amarav Tavi, time Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Masmech geula legeula adif. To be soimich geula to geula is better. Right? We have the Geula of Purim in Shvat. We have the Etzem Geula from Mitzrayim in Nisan. Memela, even though there's a Svara say Eima Vir and Ala Mitzvahs, go ahead, the Svara to say that what? We sign with the Geula of Purim to the Geula of Nisan, right? Therefore, said Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, you're not Yoitza with the Mekriyas Megillah in Adar Aleph, only in Adar Beis. Those are the two shitas we have. Beautiful. Rabbi Eliezer, time of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Mehacha, he has a different source of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Tichsiv lekayim es igeres hapurim azois hashenis. The lashon shenis means b'chodesh hasheni, but it's extra. The word is extra. It's lemichtiv hashenis. In other words, the second shenis means b'chodesh hasheni. What does that mean? The second Adar. Adar is the 11th month. Is the 12th month, right? So it means the second Adar. It doesn't mean the 12th month from Nisan. It means the second Adar. I need both psukim in order to ascertain clearly, unequivocally, that Adar, we lay in an Adar Sheni. Why? If you said just the pasuk Chol Shan V'Shana Avamina Kikushin, like the question of Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs, right? It's a very strong possibility that you should go after the Adar that's limit to Shvat because Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs. Kamash Malon Hashenis that no, you're going to the second Adar. V'Yashmin Hashenis, if you just say the second pasuk that you should read a Purim Azois Hashenis, I would say Havamina B'Tchila B'Rishon U'B'Sheni. I'd say that what? That you should lay in B'Rishon and Sheni, both months, both. In other words, one to be being Eimavir al mitzvahs, and two to be Samikul Gula. Kamash Malon B'Chol Shana B'Shana. Do it as you do every year, which is only one time. Which is the one time? The Shenis, and the second Adar. Okay. Now, the Relaz Rabbi Yossi says you learn in the first Adar, Haya Shenis my Avilei. Why does the word Shenis come? Bishlam Levishim Gamliel Shenis means the second Adar. But according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi, who says the first Adar, what does he do with the Shenis my Avilei? He boiled the Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. He uses it for a Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda. The Omer of Shmuel Bar Yehuda says Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Bitchila Kavua B'Shushan. The first year, what they were Kaveh in Shushan. And then the second year, B'chala Olam Kula. The Shenis means to be Kaiveya, the Yom Tif of Purim. The first year was in Shushan, and after that, what? It was in all the rest of the provinces where the Jews were found. Now, the Gemara now goes off to explain this Inyan about you didn't have it right away. Like you had the first Hatzalah the first year, and then it became a Jewish holiday. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Sholchalem Esther leChachamim. Esther sent the following message to the Chachamim. Kavuni l'dairis. Go ahead and be kaiveya me. Set me for generations. This should now be a yontif for generations. Sholchula. Now, if you think about it, guys, this is the first yontif. Think of it. This is a real novel idea. We have the Torah. The Torah says, "Eila Mordei Hashem Yikrai Kodesh Shetikru Slam Mayadam," and we're given in the Torah. We're given our Yom Tovim. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos. Vizehu comes along Esther. You know what she's saying? Be kaiveya, a new yontif. Remember, Hanukkah came after this. Hanukkah came after Purim. This is during the galus of 70 years between the Churban Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. So fascinating enough. Let's come up with a novel idea. Be kaiveya me as a yontif. I should be a yontif. Kavuni l'doris. Sholchula. They sent Esther. Kino atma oireres oleinu lebena umois. You're going to go ahead, what? And you're going to create jealousy among the Umois, says Rashi, 3 lines down. We're happily going ahead and mentioning their mapala, their destruction, right? Again, they killed out in Shushan, they killed 75,000 people. There's a lot of people. As a matter of fact, Shtreichi Yamach Shemo used that as a propaganda. Shtreichi used this as a propaganda that Purim, look, this Purim, they killed 75,000 people. So he used it. In fact, yeah, yes. Anyway, so now Shalchulahem. So she Esther answered the Chachamim. Kvar kosuva ani al direi hayom l'malchei malei paras. Guess what? I didn't go ahead and do it. They did it. The Goyim, the chronicles of Paras Hamadai of Persia and Mede, they already have in their chronicles. That's the word chronicles. They have in the chronicles that this happened. So by us being kaiveya, we're not creating what? Any negative press, because in fact, it's already been there. Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, Rav Chaviva. We have Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, Rav Chaviva. Masnu Bekula say the Moyed. When you have this foursome, guys, the fearsome foursome for those who remember. Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, Rav Chaviva. Masnu Bekula say the Moyed. Kol ki Aizugim. When you have these pairs. Chalufi Rabbi Yochanan, you switch Rabbi Yochanan, Umail Rabbi Yonasan, and you put Rabbi Yonasan in. So it's Rab Chanina, Rabbi Yonasan, Rav Chaviva, and they sent the following: Shalchu lehem Esther lechachamim kosfuni ledoiros. Write me for generations. Little different lashon. First of all, lashon was kavuni. Here it's kisfuni ledoiros. In other words, it's not to be kaveh as a holiday. It's to write the Megillah, guys. You hear the nuance in language. The first one was kivuni, be kaiveya me as a yontif. Here it's kisvuni, write a Megillah, which is also a tremendous hischachos, right? You're writing. Think about it. You had what did you have? You had what David wrote. You had what David wrote, what Shlomo wrote, and we know David and Shlomo, they were already previous generations, and now Esther wants to say my Megillah should be part of the Kesuvim. In other words, they should have Kedusha. They should be part of Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, that this should be part of it. Kisvuni, L'doires. Shalchula, they said, 1 second, we can't do. Haloi kasafti lecha, Shlishim. Already, I wrote for you 3. Shlishim v'loi Revi'im. 3 and not 4. Says Rashi, guys. Shlishim, Vishlosha Mekomos, Yesh Lanu Lahaskim L'chemes Amalek. Right? We have 3 places that we mentioned L'chemes Amalek. The Sefer of Eilish Shmos, the Pashas, the end of Pashas B'Shalach, Uve Mishnah Torah at the end of Kiseitze, Uve Sefer Shmuel, and Perek Tesvav and Sefer Shmuel, where we go to destroy Amalek. So those are the Zeu Shama Shleimai Dvar Sheshel Tiu Iyata B'Shoyle Ravai. He said something that what you can't go. The Shlomo said make a third. He goes, no, a third you can't make. A fourth, three we have already, and not a fourth. At Shematzle back in the Gemara. At Shematzle Mikra Kosav B'Torah. They found a source in the Torah for making a fourth mention of Amalek, and that fourth mention of Amalek, of course, would be the Megillas Esther. What does it say? It says Kosav Zois Zikaron Baseifa. It says in Shmois Yud Zayin. Write this Zikaron Baseifa. Ksav Zois Masha Kosav Kan. Right here, what we mentioned there. What do we mention there? Kan in Shmos Uv Mishnah Torah. So that's one. Zichroin Masha Kosav B'Neviim. So that's two. Baseifa Masha Kosav B'Megillah. So when it says Ksav Zois Zikaron Baseifa, Ksav Zois refers to the mentioning the Torah. Zikaron, the mentioning in the Nevi'im of Shmuel, and in Baseifa is extraneous a fourth time because we included the mentioning of Shemais and Mishnah Torah in one word. So that left over the two others to Darshan. If you mention the two mentionings of Shemos and Kiseitse, that left over the Zikaron for Shmuel and Baseifa for Megillah. So now we have a source to write down the Megillah, which is what they did. So says the Merkit Tanoi. In fact, whether there's a source to write down the Megillah is the Machloikis Tanoim. Ksav Zois Mashakosav Kan. So this, guys, is going to be a source that you don't write it down. This is going to be a source you don't write it down. What does it say? Zichroin Mashakosav and Mishnah Torah. Okay. Kosav Zois Mashakosav Kan is Shmos. One. Zichron, instead of being what for Nevi'im, is Mishnah Torah. And Baseifa is Mashakosav and Nevi'im in Shmuel. So I needed two. In other words, Rabbi Yeshua, who is the Baal Divrei Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua is the Baal Memra. He did not go ahead and combine the mentioning of Shmos and Mishnah Torah in the word Ksav Zos. Only one of Shmos. Then he used the Zikaron for Mishnah Torah, and then you have Baseifa for Nevi'im. So you had nothing extra to teach Megillah. You had nothing extra. So this is Machlokes Tanoim. This is the opinion that disagreed that Esther should be written. Rabbi Eliezer Amudoy, this is our opinion. Rabbi Eliezer Amudoy, Kasav Zois Mashakosav Kan of Mishnah Torah. Zois is going to include both. It's going to include Shemos, and it's going to include what? It's going to include Kiseitse. Zicharon Mashakosav B'Nevi'im, and Baseifa Mashakosav B'Megillah. So therefore, you have it Machlokes Tanoim, and I guess we obviously pass like Rabbi Eliezer Amudoy. Now here's the shaila, guys. We know in Masechta Shabbos, a long time ago, we discussed the sugya of, they went up to an attic of Yecheskel, and Beisham and Beis Hillel, and they enacted 18 takonis regarding Tumah. One of the takonis was that a sefer is matama the hands biyadayim. But here's what they were doing. They were keeping food next to the Sfarim, and what was happening, again, remember, those days, Sfarim were very, very precious. Everything was handwritten. Everything was b'ksav yad. They kept food there, and what was happening, the mice were coming to eat the food, and they were eating up what? They were eating up the ksafim. So they made on the Sfarim a halacha midrabanon that the matama yedayim. They'll make you hand a sheni. A sheni has the capacity to make truma a shlishi. So in other words, what now? The only thing that's makabel tuma is something that has kedusha. The only thing that's makabel tuma is something that has kedusha. So, if Esther was written Beruach HaKodesh, then it has the halacha of ksuvim, and it'll be mitama biyadayim. It'll have the capacity to transmit tumah to Rabbanon. If, however, Esther is not Beruach HaKodesh, it's just written arbitrarily, then it will not. So that's the discussion of the coming sugya. So I'm Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Esther ain't mitama Esther Yadayim. Esther is not mitama Yadayim. Right? Why? Because it wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh, as the Gemara now states. Remember the Sava Shmuel, Esther la Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. You mean to say that Esther was not written Baruch HaKodesh? For Shmuel, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. Shmuel says Esther was written Baruch HaKodesh. So therefore, if Esther was written Baruch HaKodesh, why does not transmit Tumah? And for the Gemara, Nemra Likrois. It was said Baruch HaKodesh to read. But it wasn't stated to go ahead and be written down. It's mashma that Esther was supposed to be written Baal Peh. In other words, we weren't supposed to forget it. we're supposed to lane it, but not as a Megillah. So the Ruach HaKodesh was to have it, but it shouldn't be written down. There's a Taisus over here. Let's see it quickly, the Taisus, a little bit. Let's see Taisus, guys. Nemra likreis v'loy lichtayv. Mashma, the Sava the Mutter likreis al peh. Mashma Tosfos, it appears that what? That when it wasn't supposed to be written down, then you would have to go ahead and say it by heart. The Kasha, the Hegi Polig al Stam Mishnah. They'll come on. How could this Amorayic statement? Amoraim can't argue with Tanoim. And we have an anonymous Mishnah later on that says openly at the beginning of Perek Beis, the Tani Kara al Peh, if you read the Megillah al Peh, lo yotza, you're not yotza. The Rav Nami, who the Amala come on, Rav himself says, that you have to write it down and go ahead and sew it with sinus. Rabbi Yochanan Nami Amar, that if you would read the Megillah, guys, let's say from a book like we have, Torah Nevi'im Kesuvim, if you have a Kesuvim book, that is all the Kesuvim, Mishlei, Tehillim, and included, and Shir Shirim, and including there was Esther, you'll be Yaitza, but you need your independent Megillah. So we have a question. You're telling me that Ruach HaKodesh, it wasn't supposed to be written down, the mashma that you read it al peh. So why do you do all these gemaras? And you've A, the Mishnah, and B, both Rabbi and Rabbi Yochanan themselves say that what? You won't be Yaitza. So it says Taisvis, you know what it means? The Imkara bein aksuvim lo yatsa lekach near lefarish, the had the karma lo nitl likasei Ruach HaKodesh, aval midrabana nitla lichtoi for likrois. Okay? So midrabana, according to Taisvis, is the Rabbanan. There are other mafarshim that say it would have been written in a separate sefer. There are various opinions over here how to deal with this issue. The bottom line is that Einachinami, it's not Makabel Tuma because it wasn't supposed to be written down. Back by us. Mesibe, the second line when it gets wide. Remeyo Omer, Koheles. Now you just said Esther is not written Baruch HaKodesh. Now we know there are 5 Megillas. Remeyo Omer Koheles, which is one of the 5 Megillas. Those are the statements of Koheles of Shlomo HaMelech. Einem Tames Yadayim. Why? Because obviously it doesn't have Kedusha. It wasn't Baruch HaKodesh. Umachloikis B'Shir Hashirim. And Shlomo's other Megillah Shir Shirim, here we have a machlokas whether it's Matama b'Yadayim. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Shir Shirim, there's no machlokas, Matama es Yadayim. Or machlokas by Koheles, and the machlokas is by Koheles. So we have machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi regarding Koheles and regarding Shir Shirim. Which one is written Baruch HaKodesh and not? Rabbi Shimon Yomer, Rabbi Shimon a third opinion, Koheles mikule Beis Shammai and Mechumei Beis Hillel. Koheles is from the Kulas of Beis Shammai. The Beis Shammai says Megillas Koheles is not Makabel Tuma because it wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh. Or Chumrei Beis Hillel that it is Makabel Tuma because it was written Baruch HaKodesh. Aval Rus v'Shir Hashirim, Megillas Rus and Shir Hashirim, the Esther, and here's the Kasha, Metames Yadayim. Esther would mean Metames Yadayim. So you just told me Esther was not written Baruch HaKodesh and it's not Metames Yadayim. Here we see clearly there's Metayim Yadayim. So you have obviously it must have been written Baruch HaKodesh. And for the Gemara, who Shmuel don't Rabbi Yeshua, he says like Rabbi Yeshua. Again, we had a Tana above. We had 2 opinions, right? We explained 2 opinions whether Esther was written Baruch HaKodesh or not. With the opinion that it was not was Rabbi Yeshua. Again, because he dashed in the pasuk Ksav Zois to mean Shmos, Zikaroin Mishnah Torah, Basefer Nevi'im. So he didn't have an extra Megillah. So since Rabbi Yeshua dashed in that way, so that's who Shmuel goes according to. Once Shmuel the Amoira has a Tana that holds like him, or that he holds like, then he's able to go ahead and join the fray and give his opinion and not go ahead and be beaten down by what another Tana. What? Whether they have kedusha, whether they have kedusha, that seems to be a machlokes over here. But eicha is in there also. It's not even discussed over here, right?
Yachek Knesset Gadol were the ones who determined, which Mordechai was on the and they had a little. He was the last. I'm saying, but
I think that the shaila over here is whether it's Matayim b'Yadayim not. They're all into Tanakh, but the shaila is whether it's considered a safe for the Matayim b'Yadayim. In other words, for sure if it wasn't Baruch HaKodesh, so it could be that they'd be written down as a book by itself, but it wouldn't be Matayim b'Yadayim, and we would have such a book. You would have such a book. So I don't know if saying it's Kesuvim, what does that matter? Like makes it what Baruch HaKodesh. I don't think so. Mordechai. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Asi Omer. Just again along that vein. Again, vis-a-vis Shmuel, he's good. Shmuel's good because he has a Tana that he holds according to, right? That's it. Now, just discussing further, Tanya Reb Shimon ben Asi Omer. Koheles eina mitam es yadayim. Koheles would not be mitam yadayim. It's not, even though it's part of Kesuvim, it's not. It didn't come to him from Ruach HaKodesh. It was Shlomo's own wisdom. It was his parables and his own wisdom that formulated Koheles, and therefore what? It's not Matami Yevadayim because it wasn't given Baruch HaKodesh. In other words, you think that's the only thing Shlomo had to say? But like find Namar, it says he had 3,000 things to say, right? And in other words, Bishleim, if you tell me that's all his wisdom, that's not in Baruch HaKodesh. But if you're telling me it's not all his wisdom, then it must be, he didn't pick and choose. It must be Baruch HaKodesh. He was told to piecemeal. These are the ones he should have and not others. That would make sense. He has a multitude of parables, a multitude of sayings, and the ones that are there are the ones, Baruch HaKodesh, that he wrote down for posterity. For Omer, his second pasuk, al toisev al devarov, do not add onto his words. My V'Omer, what does V'Omer mean? You might say, Meima Tuva, it's true that Shlomo had many, many, many parables, many mashalim. Amar de'iboy ichtav, de'iboy lo yichtiv, and he could have picked and choose, but ain't nochinami, it wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh. Tashma, therefore the pasuk says, Al toisev al devarav. Don't add on to his words. You know why? Because his words were written Baruch HaKodesh. Don't add on to them. In other words, if it was just wisdom, then okay. And he wrote down some of it, then it wouldn't have any particular kedusha. But once you're going ahead and saying the pasuk, al toisev al devarav, it's coming with a statement. You know why? Since that's written Baruch HaKodesh, do not add on to it. So therefore, Kelis is written Baruch HaKodesh, and therefore, as a result, it will be mitama biyadayim. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer, a very good Shmaka Gemara, guys. Esther Baruch HaKodesh number. Now, Ruach HaKodesh would be a step less than Nevuah. Ruach HaKodesh is when you say something that a person possibly, sometimes they say something and they don't know what they're saying, but it's going to be true. So I'll give you an example. By Avram Avinu, by the Akedah, he tells Elazar and Yishmael, Shavu lechem poim imachamar, vani vanar nishtachavem neshuva. We'll go up there and we will return. Yeah? So what do you mean we'll return? You're not going to return with Yitzchak. He's going to be dead. So the Rashi says, Ruach HaKodesh Amra. He was speaking, that's Take. It's not that he knew of Avram Avinu what he said, but then the Ruach HaKodesh is saying what's going to happen. So over here, there are things that we're going to come, of course, right now. How could they have possibly known if it wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh? How could they possibly be known if it wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh? So here we go. Tanya Rebbe Eliezer Omer. Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra Shnemar Vayoma Haman Belibo. This is when Achashverosh tells Haman who the king wants to go ahead and honor, and what would you do? What did Haman say? Haman said, Belibo, who else does you want to accept me, right? How would he possibly know what Haman was thinking? Unless it was Baruch HaKodesh. Yeah. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra, Shenemar, Vati Esther Noisas Chein Be'enei Kol Royeha. Esther found favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. How can we possibly know what people thought about Esther, right? How can we possibly know? Ella must be that what was written Baruch HaKodesh. Rabbi Meir Omer, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra, Shenemar, by Yivoda Hadav Mordechai, became known the plan of Bixam Viseresh to poison Achashverosh, became known to Mordechai. So how could he possibly know if not Baruch HaKodesh? Rabbi Yosef ben Damascus, Rabbi Yosef from Damascus, Omer, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra Shnemar, Ubeviza leSholchu Es Yadam. How could they possibly know? How could they possibly know that they didn't go ahead and touch all the spoils? So Amar Shmuel says, now these were all statements for Tanoim, guys. All the previous statements. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yosef says, Amar Shmuel, Yihavi Hasan, if I was there in the conversation, Have Amina Milsa Dadif Mikulu. I think I would have said something that is even more powerful than all of them. What would I would have said? What would I have said? Shenemar Kimu Vikiblu. We know that by the in Shemayim Kimu Lamaila, they accepted in Shemayim Masha Kiblu Lamata. What we did over here. In other words, they were makabel in this world, and in Shemayim they went ahead and they accepted that what it says a yontif. Mehecha taste in Shemayim. Guys, how would they know in Shemayim what is? So Kimu Vikiblu, obviously Esther was in Baruch HaKodesh, and this was said by the Amoira Shmuel. The Gemara now goes over each and every statement of what? Of the previous Tanoim. Amar Rava says, Rava, a later Amoira than Shmuel. Lekulu islu pircha. To all of the Tanoim, I have a question. Levam the Shmuel, with the exception of Shmuel. The Leslie Pircha, Shmuel's ha'ara of Kimu v'Kiblu as a raya to Ruach HaKodesh, on that I don't have any questions. The Rabbi Eliezer said from Haman, but that Haman said, Beliboy, how would you know? Svarahu. You don't need Ruach HaKodesh. It's a logical svara that Haman thought. There was no one as prestigious as what? As Haman, who again bribed his way to the top. And that Achashverosh wanted to go ahead and give good upon. It made sense. It was him. So it doesn't have to be Ruach HaKodesh. We could figure out that he thought it's him. The Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Akiva, who said what? That it was Esther who found Chain in everybody's eyes. How could you possibly know what people were thinking? Rebbe Laza, like the Amira Rebbe Laza, the Rebbe Laza, Malamed, she called Echa v'Echa did Masalai Kumasai. We know Esther, Esther Magedes Smoladata. Every other nation wanted what? Esther to be part. Oh, I want the queen to be my landsman. I want the queen to be my landsman. Each one should be what? From me. So Memela, that's how you know that Esther found favor in everybody's eyes. So that's Ruach HaKodesh. V'hod Reb Meir who said that what? That the poisoning of big son of Sheresh. Dilma, this is my question. Dilma Kreb Chia Bar Abba, Dama big son of Sheresh, Shnei Tarshishim Haya. There were two people from the place of Tarshish, and they spoke a language that no one else understood. But Mordechai, guys, what was Mordechai's nickname? Mordechai Balshin. You know he's called Mordechai Balshin? Because he spoke 70 languages. He was a member of Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin had to speak all 70 languages. Mordechai was from the Charish V'Katza. He was the person who was taken out in Yechanya. He's one of the cream of the crop. What Nebuchadnezzar did 11 years before the destruction, he took the cream of the crop out from Eretz Yisrael. So maybe the reason he was able to figure out what Big Son of Church was saying, not Baruch HaKodesh, but he understood their language, and they thought no one else did. Rabbi Yossi ben Numask, who said that his raya was from the spoils, Dilma Pristaki Shada. Maybe they sent back messages to Mordechai and Esther that they and Achashverosh they didn't take back from the spoils. So in all of the Tanoim, says Rava, I have a kasha to their raya that it's Ruach HaKodesh. But Shmuel, who said Kimu v'Kiblu, there's no way we would know what's going on in Shemayim, it not for Ruach HaKodesh. And Shmuel Vade Leslie Pircha. So Amar Ravina says Ravino, Hainad Amiyinshi, it was a popular saying in ancient Babylonia, Tava Chada Pilpelta, Charifta, Mimalet Sina Kari. It's better one sharp pepper than a bunch of what? A bunch of a basket of pumpkins. In other words, meaning it's a facetious way of saying better to have what? One sharp pepper like Shmuel than all these big pumpkins, these big Tanoim who Rava had questions on. Rabbi Yosef Mehacha. Rabbi Yossi says from here's the way you know it's written Baruch HaKodesh. It says V'yimei Purim Eila Lo Ya'avoru, and these days of Purim they will not pass mitoich HaYehudim. Rashi says Lo Ya'avoru. How would you know that Lo Ya'avoru? That's awesome. How do you know in the future that these days of Purim wouldn't come to an end? Well, it must be that Esther was written Baruch HaKodesh. That's how they knew. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Mechacha V'zichram Lo Yosef Mizaram, and their remembrance of Mordechai and Esther will not stop from their children. The zichron will not stop from their children. So I have Biksavim, Yerushalmi, guys. Listen to this Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi is in Perik Beis Halacha Dalid. In Perik Beis Halacha Dalid, ala pasuk Zichron la Yosef Mizaram Melamed Shekaveilo Chachamim Mesechta. That this pasuk, the Yerushalmi says, Zichron la Yosef Mizaram. You know how it was ensured that they would not be forgotten? That they wrote down Masech the Megillah. The Megillah, what we're learning right now, was written down to ensure it won't be forgotten. Says Rav Abramsky Zatzal, the only way to ensure that Torah Shebechsav won't be forgotten is to have Torah Shebal Peh. The only way to ensure that Torah Shebechsav won't be forgotten is to have Torah Shebal Peh. So it says beautifully over here. You know how? By the fact that we wrote down not the Megillah, by the fact that we wrote down the Masechta Megillah. As a result of Masechta Megillah, that's going to guarantee the eternity of Mordechai ve'Esther. Beautiful, beautiful limud from Rav Abramsky. Okay. Gemara gets better, guys. It's hard to believe, but it gets better. So now, we know there's a mitzvah of Matanos Lav Yoinim, and there's a mitzvah of Mishloach Manos. Tana Rav Yosef, u'mishloach manos ish l're'ehu. Now, manos is mashma 2. It's plural. Ish l're'ehu is mashma 1. Shtei manos le'ish echad. 2 manos to one person. So you go ahead and you send 2 manos to a person. Now, halachically, we'll get into a little later, but just it popped into my head now, fellas. The halacha is you should send 2 cooked foods to what that person can eat right away is mishalach manos. And it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, you should send meat. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, you should send meat. So Rabbi Avram Kelman Zatzal, he was the head of Prospect Park. He told me once a vart that he heard from his Rebbe, Gavaldik vart. Why by mishalach manos do we dafka send meat? Why meat of all things? Send any tafshel. Why meat? Listen what he said. When we ate from this, why do we eat from somebody's house? It's because I eat in your house because I believe you trust your wife trusts your wife's kashrus. I trust yours kashrus. Eid echad, your wife and you are eid echad, one eid. Neman be surim. When it comes to issa beheta, one eid is believed. So therefore, a person has what is called a ne'emonis. While we say in Yiddish a faleslichkeit. The person has a faleslichkeit, a belief. What happened when they ate from Sudas Achashverosh, guys? They lost it. When they ate from Sudas Achashverosh, they lost in their manis because they were eating tarfis. So after what we makabel Torah, kimu v'kivlu, we makabel Torah once again. So why do we show that we regained on their manis? We dafka go ahead and send meat and eat meat to show that what each person has been restored to his previous status. They ate harfis. Okay, you could say what you want to say. They ate harfis. Okay, but anyway, chalapachas. This is the okay. And when you look in front, you're looking. Anyway, says the Gemara. Tana Rabbi Yosef. So b'shem mishanach yishloyehu shtei manos leishachun matanos avyonim. What's matanos? Avyonim shtei matanos to shnei bnei adam. You have to give 2 matanos to 2 people. So when it comes to tzedakah matanos avyonim, you have to give to 2 avyonim. When it comes to shalach manos, 1 person. Of Yehuda Nesiya, again, I always point out that's the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya is the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had a son, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel had a son, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. Don't get mixed up and think that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Shodabei Rabbi Ishaya, he sent him Atma the Igla Tilsa. He sent him the leg of an Igla Tilsa. He said Igla Tilsa is a calf that's a third of its growth, a third born. Right? It says it's very geschmack. The garva, the charma, and a barrel of wine. So you see again that he sent meat and he sent wine. Sholach lay on the base. Sholach lay kaimu banu rabenu umishloach manus yishloyehu. You have been fulfilled, right? Because you sent 2 things. You sent wine and meat. Rabba shodalei lemori bar Rav. Rav sent to Mori bar Rav biyad Abaya. Now Rabba had been elevated to the position of as the head of the yeshiva in Pumbedisa. He'd been a regular guy, but he was elevated to the position of a regular guy. I mean, a regular Yush Talmid Chacham, but he was elevated to the position of the head of the academy in Pumbedisa. Now, what happened? So he sent to Barmar. He sent the following: Mole, and Abaya was the one who was his shliach to bring it. Mole taxa de kaspa, a sack full of dates. Umole kasa kimcha davshuna, and a sack full of a kais full of parched, toasted grain, sugar smacks. That's what he sent him. Now, this is obviously not a very, very prestigious food. So Amalei Abaya to Rabba, Hashta Amamari, Mari Bamar is going to say, Ichakla'a Malka Lahave. If an ani becomes a melech, the kuli mitzavari leinachis, does he not take the decal off the palm tree off his neck? Meaning, obviously your status has changed, and you're sending me something of a poor person. You should send me something more prestigious. So so Rabba then went ahead and sent him ilu mole taska de zangvila. He sent him a sack full of zangvila of ginger, umole kasa de papelta aricha, and a mole kasa of long peppers. So I'm going to buy a hashta amamar, and Mar is going to say, Anosh shadri le chulya. I sent you sweet stuff. You shad le churfa. So Abaya had a question on the choice of Rabbi's mishalach manis. He mati hasam. When Abaya got to that town of Mari Bamar, Kravela Shisin, Mari Bamar give to Abaya. Shisin soy the Shisin mine kadera, 64 speisen of 60 plates for Okli Shisin. Pliny ate 60 pieces. Ubi shula basraisa havi karile. And the last thing they gave is called tzili kedar, mamish to cook literally the roast of the pot. Uboil and mechas tzam. It was so good he wanted to lick the pot. Abasra. Some Rabbi, Hainudam Yinchi, Kofin Anya. An ani is hungry, V'layad, and doesn't know. Knows he thought he was full, he thought he was satiated, and he was still eating. Inami, Rafcha the Besima Shchicha. There's always room for jello, right? Remember? There's always room for jello.
Can't say that anymore.
You can't say that anymore, right? Right. Bill Cosby had this commercial. There's always room for jello, right? Gedenkt us? So that's the thing. There's always room for the besima. You ever see people? They go ahead. You eat. You eat to go to a wedding, and you eat. You stuffed, and then they bring you out the Viennese table, showing you unstuffed. What's pshat? What's pshat? Yehuda, you have pshat.
There's always room for a pickle.
Okay. Anyway, like says the,
Sugar activates the mind. And even if you're full.
yeah, it's the sugar. So it's the sugar. Abaya bar Ovin, Rav Chanina bar Ovin, Michlefes, the sugar. So here's the dentist woke up. He's so happy. You eat the sugar. It's good for business, right? It's very good. Anyway, guys, Geschmack. Abaya bar Ovin, Rav Chanina bar Ovin, Mechalfi Sadusayu Ladodi. They used to go ahead and switch sudas. So I saw Pshat, guys. Why do you mean they switched sudas? They were both aniyim. They're both aniyim. So what would they do? They would send to each other. So each one would send to each other. Now it increased the amount that each one had, right? And they were able to Mekayim Mishalach Manas and also allow the person to eat a Suda. The Mishalach Manas and allow the person to eat a Suda. I don't think I'm not sure. I saw the Suda and I saw Mishalach Manas. So I'm a Rava, Mechai Vinish of Sumi Puria. Okay, this is probably the most famous Gemara in Masechta Megillah. Everyone, for some reason, every yeshiva bachar knows this Gemara, and they're machmer to keep this Gemara to the best of their ability. So I'm a Rava, Mechai Vinish the Besume Bepuria. Person's chayiv to go ahead and get intoxicated on Purim. Ad lo yoda bein Orach Haman leBaruch Mordechai. Until you don't know the difference between Orach Haman and Baruch Mordechai. Okay, we'll get back to this in a second. Rabbi Rab Zera. Of the Sudas Purim Hadadadi, Rabbi and Rav Zera, they made a Sudas Purim together. Ifsum, and they got drunk. Come Rabbi got up, and Shachte Reb Zera, and Pashtas, he killed Reb Zera, he shechted Reb Zera. Lamacha, boy, the next day, I guess he woke up and he saw Reb Zera lying there. Boy, Rachme, Rabbi David, V'achye, and he brought him back to life. The Shana, the next year, Amalei, Rabbi said to Reb Zera, let's go eat together again. So Reb Zera said, no, thank you. Not every year is what is Mismar Chadesh. Okay, so there's a lot of Torah on this, guys. First of all, there are other Rishonim who say this should not be taken literally. When it says Shachte, change the sin to a samech, to sachte, that he choked him. And he didn't kill him, like Sachte, he choked him. And according to Mashal, he drank too much and it got his throat, and he got sick, and he davened that he should get better. So that would explain that how could Rabbah get so intoxicated to bring murder out in the first place. Now, in fact, there is a Gemara in Daf Samech Hey in Sanhedrin, that Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara in Shabbos discusses, Kufna and Vav discusses different mazolos, and it discusses that one person's born on the Madim, who's born underneath the red planet, such as Mars. And it says you will be a killer. Or you should, so what happens if you're born under that? You should become a bloodletter, you should become a moil, you should become a shochet. So Rabbi says, I was born under that and I was not a killer. I guess Rabbi didn't see, Megillah, Daf Zayin on the base. So fascinating that you see that Rabbi, according based on Gemara Kufna and Vav, had it in him to go ahead and have this midah of adimus, of like David HaMelech had that midah, Esav had that milah, that midah. They looked at that. So now, the according to this, so again, he pushed it, they dive in and get better. Now, there's a Rabbeinu Ephraim now who says the reason we bring in this Maisa with Rabbah and Rabbi Zera right after the statement that Chayav Adlam Sume is to show we don't pass like that. Because look what can happen as a result of what? Of getting drunk. You can kill somebody, right? Or worse, a person gets sick. So the reason we bring in this Maisa, says Rabbeinu Ephraim, is to show that we don't hold like that. We don't hold like that. There are, again, the opinions that you're supposed to drink a little bit, not go to sleep, and that's like you don't know the difference. I share with you the words of the Marsha, Gavaldik Marsha. If you do the gematria, guys, of Baruch Mordechai, it's 502. If you do the gematria of Ara Haman, it's 502. So therefore, it's both 502. And therefore, if you go ahead on Purim, you drink to the point where you can't make the cheshbon, the difference between Ara Mordechai and Baruch Mordechai and Ara Haman, you're good. I love that shot. I love that shot. You do the math, guys. You're gonna after share, do the math. You'll see it's 502. So it's
Rabbi,
Yes.
I think you said also in Masechtas Chulin there was a sheet that Rabbi Zera said
Oh,
something about.
no. I'm going to say it again. Don't rain on my parade yet. Okay. Okay. Now. Okay. So now, the Rabbi Zera, there's a Gemara in Chulin Daf Ches Amid Aleph. Gemara in Chulin Daf Ches Amid Aleph discusses whether you can do shchita with a very, very burning hot knife. What's the shaila? When you cut the kan and the veshet, right? It has to be you cut it. When you cut the food pipe to trach in the esophagus, you have to cut it. So here's the shaila. If you're taking a hot knife, it could be that you're burning it. And if you're burning it, it's not cutting, right? So Rabbi Zera says you could do it. Now why? Because he says as you cut, it falls apart like this naturally. So since it's falling apart like this naturally, right? It's not getting burnt. It's the edge of the knife that's doing the shechita, and not the burning doing the shechita. So Rabbi Zera says that statement. So I think it's the Chassam Sofer who says, Rabbi Zera, I think it's Chassam Sofer. Rabbi Zera should know what he's talking about. After all, he was geschachten over here. So that's how he knows. He knows exactly what happens when you take something sharp and you cut. Okay, the problem with that Pshat Yehuda is, so Rabbi Zera says in the name of Shmuel. That's the kasha on the Maisa. Rabbi Zera Shmuel. If Rabbi Zera is saying his own edus, he wouldn't say it in the name of Shmuel. He would say it himself. But it's nice piece of Torah. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, very good, Shmuel. Oh, so that's a shaila. According to the day that he's dead, right? According to the day that he's dead, so he have to be Mekadosh his wife again? In other words, is his wife considered? Does he have to, before he lives with his wife, does he have to be Mekadosh her again? Because since he's dead, she's now, there's no, it broke the kedushin, right? Anisha becomes free, I'll be Mrs. Abal. So would Rav Zera have to be Mekadosh his wife again? The Lifax can't let this Gemara go. You know what I'm saying? They just have to handle the halachas. They can't, right?
We've been right from Hasinai that after we revived, they didn't have to be married on, okay?
That's correct. Again, I saw the shaila. It's psak. I didn't get to the psak halacha. And it says the Gemara Vaita.
Yehuda would like to have a Reb Zera for 600.
Okay. Anyway. Amarava Sudas Purim Shachal Balayla. If you eat the Sudas Purim at night, La Yotzi De Chavasa, you're not Yotzi Chiev. My timer, it says you may Mishta B'Simcha Kasev. You made the days of Mishta B'Simcha. Ravashi have a Yosef Kamei Ameimar. Noga, and he was waiting for the Talmid Chacham to come. Noga, it became dark. La Yosef, the voice of Rabbanan to come. So Amalei, my timer La Yosef Rabbanan. What's the reason Rabbanan to come? So Dilma treated Besudas Purim. So it's told them maybe they're busy eating Purim. Some why they could have been Purim on the night before. Some like Shmile Lamar, did you not hear Rava Sudas Purim Shalachla Balaylo Yatzde Chavasai? So Amalei, so he told him Shmile, Amalei in. So Tanimine Arba Simon, he heard it from him. What he learned it from him 40 times. The Domile came out the Manach Bekise. It was like what? It was Mamish put in his wallet. It was put until he had it in his tash. Okay, we'll stop over here.